How long is Marcus Mariota the starter for Atlanta? When does Desmond Ridder take over? And what does that look like? I've got my answer, Bloom. I know Matt Waldman's got his answer about Desmond Ridder, but what's yours?
My answer is the betting markets have betting on everything now, right? See, I can bet on the next word I'm going to say. Wait, let me put in a bet. I think Ridder is the most likely. I would say he's the first rookie quarterback to hit the field. I think that he probably gets on the field before Pickett, because the main thing here is the team competitive, and we know the Falcons aren't going to be competitive in the NFC South. The Steelers might be competitive for long enough to keep Mitchell Trubisky in until Thanksgiving, like we talked about. Either way, it's not good. But I want to believe in Marcus Mariota. I want to believe that the league has kind of done him dirty. We saw him on, I think it was like a Thursday night game, right? The one game that Derek Carr missed. He looked good. He looked better than he did at any point with the Titans. He looked like a quarterback that understood, I don't have many more chances. He played with urgency. He summoned up a lot of what we saw in his athleticism and all the things that made him the number 2 overall pick. So I want to believe in him. But at the same time, when you look at his surroundings, see, this is kind of like Justin Fields in Chicago. How can we really evaluate Marcus Mariota in this situation, right? With Drake London as his number 1 receiver, with Cordero Patterson, as much as we love him, a running game that's Patterson and Damian Williams and Tyler Algier. I'm giving away all the spoilers for the episode, Cease. So I think that once this team's out of contention, we'll see Ridder, and that's not a good thing for anybody that has any part of this offense for fantasy. And much like Chicago, I have Chicago on the mind here, Cease, because I think when you deploy an offense that doesn't really give defenses too much to think about outside of Kyle Pitts, it's hard to set up your quarterback for success. So, 2 quarterback superflex leagues, Ridder you keep on the bench because he can run, because he's a good athlete. Mariota also can run. There's a chance that he's better than we expect. So there's some marginal value there. But I think this is a marginal team. I think the real headline here, Cease, with the Falcons is the rebuild begins now. Last year, because of the cap, because of other things that were left over from the Quinn Dimitroff regime, Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith had to kind of make do, like a half rebuild, we can trade Julio Jones, we have to keep Matt Ryan, etc. Deion Jones still on the team. Who knows for how much longer. The real rebuild begins now.
Yeah, the rebuild begins now, and they still don't have a quarterback. Sorry, Ridder's not the long-term. Maybe preseason watch list is where Ridder quiets the doubters. Listen to Matt Waldman talk about Ridder. I saw Ridder at the Senior Bowl on the same field as Pickett and Malik Willis, and he didn't look the same. And again, there was a lot of talent around him at Cincinnati. It wasn't just him. Right. And oh my God, look at Cincinnati. Look how far they made it. Yeah. And look what happened when they played a real team. That's the problem. And with Desmond Ridder, Bloom, mechanically, he's fine. Leader, he's fine. He's the type of guy every team wants in the locker room. It just doesn't come together under pressure. And making plays under pressure is the number 1 asset for any quarterback.
And when we look at Ridder, it's just limited ceiling there. Not necessarily athletically, not necessarily from a standpoint of did he elevate his program? His program became an elite program while he was there. But when it comes down to it, like you say, Cease, when the screws get tighter in the NFL, his accuracy issues, his processing issues, he's a fringe, Tyrod Taylor, right? I'm just throwing out a rough comparison of not good enough to be a full-time starter. This is why he fell to the 3rd round, but good enough to be a quarterback that if you have to bring him in off the bench, well, you might have something there. Again, for fantasy, because of the running ability, and also because when these rookie quarterbacks get out there, they have to rely on that a lot more. There could be something there with Ridder, but there's a reason he fell to the 3rd round. And you're right, Cease. Back to the drawing board for quarterback. This is probably not going to be lightning striking. It's not even going to be Jalen Hurts. It's not going to be a situation where maybe Ridder falling to them, because they did have him as the number 1 quarterback. But I think that says more about the class than Ridder.
Yeah, I think we're going to look back on this as remember when we thought Kenny Pickett was a thing? This class is it was like EJ Manuel's class, right? Wasn't Gino in there? Okay. Yeah. Maybe Ritter can be like
Nassib,
Geno.
Barkley.
Yeah. I remember Barkley getting that first round hype and he fell to the first pick of the 4th round.
Yeah.
So there you go. What? Felipe Frank's playing tight end now, right?
Yeah, they're doing a jack of all trades thing with him. They like him. They can find some uses for him. Maybe Arthur Smith can show us some of his inventiveness with Franks.
Actually saw Franks at the Senior Bowl look better than Ritter. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. It was close though. Anyway, you got to jump out. You got to make him notice like Cordell Patterson did. But as you mentioned, Bloom, there's now a mix. Tyler Algier will be there as their power back. Damian Williams can do a lot.
Mm-hmm.
When I see this as almost a 3-headed committee, although there will be 2 that we should focus on, and then Williams, the handcuff backup insurance, whatever. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about here.
And again, we don't expect overachievers coming out of this offense. I like Cordero Patterson. I want Cordero Patterson to succeed. I'm so happy that we're talking about him in terms of fantasy relevance. But where he's going in the draft, and he has that lead back bump. He is the lead back. But again, if I'm choosing between Cordero Patterson and Tony Pollard, even if I'm choosing between Cordero Patterson and Devin Singletary, who's going after Patterson, a round or 2 after Patterson, I'm probably not going to take Patterson. Now, if they redeploy him as a receiver, maybe the answer at receiver is also Patterson. But they went away from that as the season went on. I don't know if he'll hold up. So there is a point where Patterson can make your draft. If he is a Deebo Samuel or a reverse Deebo Samuel, where he's primarily a running back, but also gets some looks at wide receiver. We saw that early in the season that he could make your week. Maybe if they commit to that and he stays healthy, he can make your season. But I'm not putting a chip on that. Like you said, Damian Williams still very useful. Tyler Algier, I think I saw the name James Conner thrown out there, and not to say that's his ceiling for fantasy, but to say just a no-nonsense runner, not necessarily somebody who's going to add a lot of value with elusiveness. And even though he's a power back, he's not Derrick Henry. Decent footwork for a bigger back. Again, though, there's a reason he fell to the 5th round. And chances are the Falcons go back to the drawing board next year, probably take a running back in the first 2 days of the draft, and Algier is merely depth.
And Algier is that depth. And then there's Damian Williams again, who can do whatever they want. And behind him, in Quadriolison, we've seen some stuff from. Well, they still got Caleb Huntley kicking around there as well. So it is preseason watch list. And, maybe another team, these guys will do something. But there'll be some interest here in this backfield for us to pay attention.
And there's jobs up for grabs. Algier doesn't have anything promised to him. He has to perform. So like you said, these guys are hungry. There's a potential job to be one for Huntley or Olison, who's been hanging around. The new regime liked him last year. So there's a little preseason DFS intrigue too, as I doubt they're going to be using Patterson very much in the preseason.
Is Drake London overhyped by fantasy GMs, Bloom? The first receiver off the board in a talented receiver class. Certainly, again, if the quarterback's not there, talk about limited ceiling.
Yeah. See, and the thing is, I look at Drake London, and who's he going to face? Cease, Marshawn Lattimore, Carlton Davis. Okay, Carolina doesn't have Stephon Gilmore anymore, but they have Horn. They have J.C. Horn, right? So Drake London, his first season, is going to win those matchups consistently? I don't think so. He's miscast as a number 1 as a rookie. Okay, Calvin Ridley, if he was still with the team, maybe we'd be more excited about London, even though that seems paradoxical because he's going to get more volume. They're going to force the ball to him. Maybe that justifies his 7th or 8th round ADP, but I'm not looking there. And I think this is just going to be an offense where, we make this mistake sometimes with these offenses where we say, well, there's got to be volume. Someone has to get the ball. But when they're inefficient offenses, the pie gets very small. Now, London could hit in garbage time. Pitts, we'll get to Kyle Pitts. He could hit as a garbage time guy. It's not impossible. Remember what Allen Robinson did with Blake freaking Bortles. But I'm not putting my chip on that. I'm not planning my draft around that.
Especially where these guys are going, as people are kind of getting a little bit overly excited. Like there's a tipping point for everybody. We're not going to draft Bryan Edwards and probably not Olamide Zacchaeus, but it is preseason watch list, Bloom, and those two are the next wide receivers up for Atlanta. They're interesting names.
there's some stories here, right? Brian Edwards, they get in a minor trade and always generated a lot of hype in practice, didn't translate. There was a time that Brian Edwards was on a par as a recruit in college or as a college. He was fantastic in the SEC as a freshman, right? Hasn't ever really lived up to that. So I'm just going to throw all these guys together. Auden Tate. Yeah, I like Auden Tate. I think he fell way too far in the draft, just like the draft in Alan Lazard's case, the bloodbath year for the big receivers. And Lazard has really proven once he got an opportunity with Aaron Rodgers lobbying. No one was lobbying for Auden Tate. Maybe in this kind of situation, he can show a little bit, so we'll keep him on the watch list. Damir Bird is still kicking around. He's a useful receiver. He's got some speed. Zacchaeus is better than we think, but not good enough, again, to be a starter. Maybe as a good number 3 receiver in a good pass offense. Even Geronimo Allison is there. Frank Darby, who this regime took, who's more of a high wire, deep ball guy. There's some players to watch, but I think the sum is going to be less than the parts, and the parts aren't that much to begin with. Cease.
Frank Darby might have been the best receiver I saw at the Senior Bowl. What, 2 years ago?
Better than N'Keal Harry?
2 years ago, yeah, better than N'Keal Harry. But also a player that can work the sidelines, has great body control. Like there's something more there. I don't know if it's unleashed or untapped ever, or if with the Falcons specifically. Also, I think they have Stanley Berryhill. Is that right? And I saw him at the Shrine, and that dude is lightning quick. Like break your ankles, embarrass you type of stuff. So preseason watch list, guys like Darby, guys like Berryhill, they'll get some of my attention. But your attention, Bloom, your heart.
Yeah.
You're a romantic guy.
Always.
Your heart is on Kyle Pitts. So let's let your heart flutter and explore.
So I was all about Kyle Pitts last year in the 3rd round because I thought he was going to get the drop on defenses through Arthur Smith creatively deploying him. Matt Ryan is a good enough quarterback, and Pitts was something the NFL hadn't quite seen before in terms of a tight end wide receiver hybrid who created all kinds of matchup problems. But guess what? The NFL treated him like a number 1 receiver, especially after Calvin Ridley was gone, right away. So when you put your best corner on Pitts, well, there's a learning curve there. Whenever you give him that extra attention on defense, especially with Matt Ryan, who's not the boldest passer, right? That was part of the problem last year. Matt Ryan's not exactly a 50-50 ball guy. Matt Ryan's not a throw someone open guy. Maybe that's a little more what Kyle Pitts need. Is Marcus Mariota that guy? Is Desmond Ridder that guy? Maybe Mariota could surprise us. Now, Pitts cost about the same, a 3rd round pick, and he could be a year better. And there's a situation, and I would love to see it, Cease, where Pitts is just so good that it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who's quarterback. Doesn't matter what the game plan is to shut him down. He's just that good. There's a garbage time out here too. But again, these are things where we're putting ourselves out there and predicting something affirmatively to happen that we haven't seen evidence of yet. You know, if we start hearing out of training camp that Kyle Pitts looks like he's going to dominate the world, he's going to be Calvin Johnson, because you can look at Calvin Johnson to year 1 and Calvin Johnson to year 2. And let me tell you, Calvin Johnson didn't have anything more around him in year 2 than Kyle Pitts had. And no, Cecil, you can back me up on this. It's not crazy to breathe Kyle Pitts' name in the same breath as Calvin Johnson's. That's not crazy. Okay. So Calvin Johnson is your story to say it doesn't matter. Kyle Pitts is that good. I thought last year it wouldn't matter, and it did. So you're kind of on your own here. I want to see it happen. I want that star to sparkle bright. But again, I'm not necessarily going to stake my fantasy draft, or at least my 3rd round pick on it.
Yeah, and I was going to say, Bloom, it comes down to where he's going, and people are excited about it, but it's like, you're gonna have to stake your claim pretty early if you want Kyle Pitts in your fantasy draft. I guess what, Felipe Franks and what, Anthony Ferkser?
Anthony Ferkser.
It is preseason watch list. Is anybody not named Kyle Pitts gonna catch your eye?
Yeah, no. I mean, Arthur Smith says a redemption story for Marcus Mariota. By the way, that's awkward, right? The last time that Arthur Smith and Marcus Mariota were together, he benched him
for Ryan Tannehill, who can't play.
Right. So, you know, another redemption story here with Ferkser, who also didn't really do very much for the Titans before or after Arthur Smith left. At least they're going to be patient with Arthur Smith. At least they're going to give it time for this to work, because I think you're going to see this go down before it goes up.
Okay, it is the preseason watch list. It's 32 teams, 32 episodes, and every skill position player that you want to talk about, we talk about right here on this show. Well, guess who's next? Baker. Baker. Well, Baker, if he wins the job, yes, we will talk about it. Baker versus Darnold. Hotness coming up next. It's got to be Baker, right, Bloom? I know they say he's going to compete with Sam Darnold, but Baker Mayfield, they trade for. I'm not going to give him a new contract yet, but he's got to start, especially because week 1 is against the Browns. You're on mute, buddy.
I had to build up some kinetic energy for this because, see, we thought it could not possibly get better than Russell Wilson going back to Seattle, right? It could not possibly get better than that. Oh, it can get better. It can get better in terms of the reality show of the NFL. It absolutely can get better. And yeah, they're saying it's a battle, quarterback battle. But if it's not Baker Mayfield, something went very wrong for Baker Mayfield. Or Sam Darnold just had some sort of transformation. I don't know, had some sort of MDMA therapy or psilocybin where like his mind just cleared and all the obstacles are gone. I don't know. And see, isn't this a great how it started, how it's going, right? Mm-hmm. Darnold and Baker, the first 2 quarterbacks taken in the nice suits and everything. And now they're battling to be the quarterback for Matt Rule in probably his last year with the Panthers. So I will say this, though. Baker does offer the promise of it being better. Maybe not good or great, but better. And Christian McCaffrey's coming back. How much did that drag down this offense? Not having McCaffrey who makes this stuff go. So it could be better overall for Baker, who a lot of people think the NFL, and the NFL can overreact these, right? I mean, Baker is not a number 1 overall pick. He might not even be a stalwart, entrenched starter level NFL quarterback. But he's not a quarterback that you have to pay $10 million for someone to take him off your hands. So Baker, we know he's going to use that to get the fire in his belly. I don't even know if there's a fire in Sam Darnold's belly. I don't know, it's like a couple of parakeets. I'm not sure what's in there.
Denzel Ward was the best player out of that top 5.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about Baker, Saquon, right?
Right.
Then Darnold, then Ward, then Bradley Chubb.
Yep.
And then some guy named Josh Allen at 7. And 6 is what? Quentin Nelson? Was that right?
He was okay too.
Yeah. He's been a bit of all right. Sam Darnold. Here's the problem, dude. And here's the problem. I get back to the Jets. You have a coach that wants to save his job with Baker Mayfield.
Right.
What? Baker doesn't even get a fair chance. Now, does the front office say it's not Baker's fault? Does he show enough? This is Matt Rule, right? Yeah. What, Ben McAdoo? Matt Rule had to hit a home run. He had to get a rock star, I think was the report, right? He needs a rock star offensive coordinator to save his ass. And he gets Ben McAdoo? Ben McAdoo.
Right.
Okay. That's like wanting to hire AC/DC and getting, what, Kingdom Come? Or Wolf Mother. Wolf Mother, you suck. Anyway, it's not good, man.
No,
it's not good.
Darnold's at this interesting crossroads, and when we look back and do some reflection on Darnold again, I think the thing about him was he's just seemed so blank and overwhelmed at all times. In any interview or anytime we got a vibe from him, the vibe was just remember, he's a guy who missed games for mono, right? Maybe he just came into the league too young or just didn't have that rudder. Even Baker has a rudder, right? I mean, Baker has an ethos. Baker has a persona and a mission. Still not sure about Darnold. I think Darnold might still not be sure about Darnold. and we don't want to spend too much time on the Panthers quarterbacks, but, you have Matt Corral, and he's going to get probably a chance to play if this team falls out of the playoff race, which they might not, honestly. Their defense is pretty good, and if their offense is competent, so we may or may not see Corral. They like Corral. That helped them get even more money shaved off of what Baker Mayfield cost them, like $4 million, $4.5 million. Baker took a pay cut too, by the way. Baker took a pay cut. Do you ever think you'd hear that sentence, Cease?
Yeah.
Baker Mayfield took a pay cut voluntarily. And then there's PJ Walker, who's showing off for another team maybe to be a better backup quarterback than a few teams have.
Matt Corral was what you wanted Baker Mayfield to be. At least that's the way I projected him. Like, I really liked Corral's game. And again, it wasn't a great class. We're going to look back on this years from now. It's like, I really like that Geno Smith guy or whatever. But like with Matt Corral, he's reckless.
Yeah.
You are reckless, right? Corral has no regard for his body. None whatsoever. And I'm spending more time on the quarterbacks, Bloom. One, because, well, it kind of filters into everything. But we'll see with Matt Corral. It's preseason watch list. I like Corral. I like his game. He would have been number one in this class for me had it not been the fact he got hurt again in their bowl game that he didn't need to play in. But like, he would have been the best of a bad bunch of quarterbacks.
And remember, the Panthers traded back into the second day to get him when they didn't have a pick on the second day. So it was a costly trade for them in terms of some commitment. So he could start week 1 next year. I could absolutely see a situation where Coral, when the new coach comes in, says, okay, we don't have to force a quarterback pick this year because they're not going to be so bad that they're in the top 3. Okay. And Coral has a lot to work with. So I'm excited to see him in the preseason. And I'm excited to see what this offense sees. I really feel like fantasy football narratives have not given enough credence to the possibility that as miserable as this offense was, it would have at least been lukewarm with Christian McCaffrey, if not good. Maybe he can be the crank that makes this offense turn, the engine turn over more than Baker.
Yeah, more so, and just lean on him and go to him and, well, quite frankly, use him up.
Yeah.
You know,
you paid him.
So there's McCaffrey. You paid him, get it out of him. And can he stand up to that? Chuba Hubbard, Donta Foreman there behind him. So there's a conversation around this Panthers backfield. And of course, DJ Moore, we'll get to them, or, who takes over for Robbie Anderson. Yeah. But this is McCaffrey and how, can you bring it back, Bloom? Maybe not number 1 fantasy player, but, you take him as an RB1 and you're happy you took him as an RB1.
You probably take him at the 2nd pick or 3rd pick, maybe even the 1st pick. I'm not talking anybody out of that because he, unlike Saquon Barkley, when he's been on the field, he's still been far and away the number 1 fantasy running back. So it's just him staying on the field. You put together his injuries. Cease, I don't see a troubling pattern. I mean, if there's a troubling pattern, it's that they push him back too early, or he pushes himself back too early and they don't tell him no. But the injuries don't show me that it's his physiology. I don't think it's a question of him being used up so that he's just fragile at this point. Now, we could have another injury-riddled season. And see, isn't this the nature of fantasy football? If Christian McCaffrey is the number 1 fantasy running back and plays all 17 games and helps people win titles, we should have seen it coming. And if Christian McCaffrey only plays 7 games and ruins fantasy seasons, we should have seen it coming. So I'm okay with that. And then the player behind him, well, Chuba Hubbard wasn't worth that much last year. Mike Davis was a very important player 2 years ago. The player behind him is an important fantasy player to know, and it's Donta Foreman. I think the Donta Foreman pickup tells us that they gave Chuba Hubbard. I know Chuba Hubbard had a great game against Matt Rule. Was it his wife called him and said, you got to take him? Remember how good he was against us? I appreciate it. I mean, I appreciate opening up the process and getting input from everybody. You don't have to act on that input, though. So Chuba Hubbard, I think, showed them what he's got. It's not a lot. Donta Foreman, Achilles, not a career ender anymore. Donta Foreman looked pretty good at times. If you squinted, he kind of looked like Derrick Henry in a Titans uniform. It wasn't just the uniform. So I think that Foreman is the guy we want to have. If you take McCaffrey in the 1st round and you're just feeling like, well, what if he gets hurt? Just make sure you take Foreman in the very late round, still not getting any buzz.
Yeah, not zero buzz whatsoever, but that could change quickly in fantasy football. We know that. DJ Moore's got plenty of buzz, but Bloom, it goes back to the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Okay, DJ Moore, what are you going to do with garbage quarterback play again?
Yeah, and will it be garbage, Cease, or will it be like compost? Compost is useful garbage, right? Right? So it can't get worse. Okay, I don't think the quarterback play for Moore can get worse. And see, if we had a list of wide receivers whose output doesn't match their talent, in other words, they have the ability to do more. Who's on this list? Like Terry McLaurin, right?
Mm-hmm.
This year, DK Metcalf's on that list.
Allen Robinson used to be on that list.
Right. Absolutely, DJ Moore's been on that list. Now, from Sam Darnold to Baker Mayfield's only an incremental improvement, but an incremental improvement can be enough that takes him from that third, fourth round questionable zone into the second round. This is a wide receiver 1 every week. We just need some more touchdowns. The other side of it, though, Cease, is, of course, with Baker Mayfield throwing the ball downfield, we had the Odell Beckham saga. And who's posting to Instagram this time around on DJ Moore's behalf, right? And who's liking it, saying, yeah, Baker Mayfield is the reason. Now Baker Mayfield's the reason DJ Moore is underperforming. But I think that you look at those, and we named some of these guys already, like DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin, that third, fourth round range of receivers has a wide range of possibilities. And I do think that Baker Mayfield going to Carolina pushes DJ Moore up to the top of that tier, or at least one of the top considerations in that tier, because it can get a lot better if it's just a little bit better in quarterback play.
A lot better if it's just a little bit better, and a little bit better for the other guys. Terrace Marshall has gotten some buzz. You know, it is a drumbeat, but there's been some buzz about Terrace Marshall. We'll see. There's been kind of anti-buzz. What do you call if it's not positive, right? Well, I guess it is buzz, Bloom. It's just maybe not the buzz you want for Robbie Anderson there. We'll see if there's a switch with Marshall taking more than Anderson, what have you. Fantasy GMs aren't really paying attention to this, but Rashard Higgins can still play. He's good. Where's Chris talking about CSU, right? Like, oh, okay, he can still play. It's just a bad situation. He's buried on the depth chart. Here we go again. But he should be used to it because, well, he played in Cleveland.
Right, with Baker Mayfield, and that's the headline there, right? So there's Robbie Anderson. It didn't work out when he was reunited with Sam Darnold. He seems unstable. Is that okay for me to say? And I say this, I have concern for him. It's a concern in my heart. I'm not trying to put him down. Okay, I just think that we've seen a couple of incidents. Wasn't there an incident at a music festival down in Florida with him too, Cease? Robbie Anderson. I think that, you know,
there was the retirement thing, right? And then the music festival thing. Like, there's been a couple
years ago. There's been a couple of things. And what it makes me think of, and I'm just doing this as a public service announcement, I have to, because again, I want to say rest in peace to Marius Thomas. I think people don't really understand how good of a human being he was and how his energy still ripples through the NFL universe. It just makes me think about CTE. It makes me think about the number of players that are dying young. It makes me think about, I just hope that we see these players as humans, and the league, especially the NFLPA, looks after these guys after football. When I think of that, I think of Robbie Anderson. I don't think of someone I want to take late in my draft. Rashard Higgins is on our waiver wire watch list, and it would be shocking if Rashard Higgins was the second leading receiver on this team. It shouldn't be, because of that chemistry he has with Baker Mayfield. Terrace Marshall turning things around, and Terrace Marshall's a great talent. I don't know what happened to him last year, but I think that the positive vibes coming out of the offseason means we can't write him off in dynasty leagues. He probably doesn't have any redraft appeal yet, but there's a ton of talent there. So this is a good enough wide receiver group, and there's a few other guys we can talk about after that. This is a good enough wide receiver group for Baker Mayfield, especially when you add in Christian McCaffrey, and there's a reason to have some optimism about this offense. I just wish it wasn't Matt Rule and Ben McAdoo.
Yeah, Shi Smith, kind of the Frank Darby. Was it the same Senior Bowl? I think it was, Bloom, anyway. Yes. But Shi Smith, preseason watch list, I'll be all over that. And Charleston Rambo, who I believe was the Shrine Bowl. Another one of these like quick players, quick cuts, that type of thing. So preseason watch list, deep dynasty. Hell yeah, I've got my popcorn. Well, maybe not my popcorn. I was going to say have your popcorn ready, Bloom, but I just had emergency oral surgery last week because of popcorn.
Make sure that's fully popped. Yeah, just get the popcorn in, like the Frito-Lay popcorn in the bag now that's already popped. With the nice cheddar stuff on it.
I don't want to say who I had, but I did have bag popcorn, Bloom. Never make fun of potential sponsor, Smart Pop.
Right. We're going to talk more about these undrafted free agent receivers. These are the Smith they spent a draft pick on because the tight end's not part of the pass offense really. But yeah, Shi Smith is a slot receiver, a dependable guy. You can always use a guy like that in offense. Rambo absolutely could outproduce his UDFA status. And then we have to acknowledge that there are tight ends on the roster. This is a fantasy football show in Carolina.
Yes, it is a fantasy football show, and we do talk about 32 teams, 32 episodes, and 32 tight ends. At least it seems that way. Tremble's interesting. Ian Thomas is disappointing. Stephen Sullivan's a guy, really. And they don't use, again, it's Matt Rule. Carolina, you will be much better off. I don't care if Baker Mayfield's your quarterback of the future. I really don't. If he is, fine. If there's a redemption story there for Baker, great. Awesome. But Matt Rule is your problem. Matt
Yeah.
Rule is
Lame
bad.
duck.
Your owner is meddling, and your head coach is awful. So good luck.
Absolutely. Tremble, and there's an interesting Will Dissly kind of angle to him where he's a better blocker than receiver, but there's athleticism and untapped potential, but they don't tap the tight end very much. We've already seen what Ian Thomas can do, not very much. He did have a flash as a rookie, and that's Carolina. You know, we just finished Atlanta where we say, well, now they can start the rebuild, and it still feels like nothing can truly move forward with this franchise until Matt Rule is not the head coach. But then does it really mean nothing can move forward until David Tepper learns what Arthur Blank learned, that as the owner, you need to take a step back?
Well, we take a step forward to your neck of the woods, Bloom, to
Yeah.
New Orleans in the preseason watch list. And oh my God, are there questions? When do I get Alvin Kamara? What do I get from Michael Thomas? And more coming up next. I like Jameis Winston, Bloom, and I like him to, well, kind of show what he was doing last year. Because what he was doing last year before his injury looked pretty good, looked pretty efficient, and didn't look like the 30 for 30 Jameis Winston. So do we get that again or no?
It could be pretty good, actually, Cease, because spoiler alert on the wide receiver group, Traquan Smith and Marquez Callaway, right? They're still on the roster, right? Deontay Hardy, formerly Deontay Harris, still on the roster, but they're the 4, 5, and 6 receivers. Doesn't that make more sense than the 1, 2, and 3? And Winston was actually extremely efficient last year. And they were going to a low volume pass offense and minimizing mistakes, and it was working. Why do quarterbacks want to work with Sean Payton? It was working. We were seeing Jameis Winston's best, most disciplined football as a passer without any of these weapons. So now what happens? So I get it, especially 2 quarterback super flex leagues. You want to give a shot to Winston to be your quarterback too. I totally get it, because what can he do with, well, certainly Chris Olave and Jarvis Landry and maybe Michael Thomas, or maybe Michael Thomas with the lowercase m and lowercase t, because he's just not quite the same. But it's exciting to think about what Winston can do. Yes, Sean Payton's gone. You would think that Pete Carmichael has just the DNA of the Sean Payton offense in the way this team is run. Dennis Allen, now see, that's a whole other thing. Dennis Allen, the head coach. Yeah, he's keeping the spot warm for somebody else, all right? But this offense doesn't need Dennis Allen. Dennis Allen has nothing to do with that. If Dennis Allen is a problem for this team, it probably won't be on the offensive side of the ball. That's not his side of the ball. And I think that the ghost of Sean Payton is still there with Jameis Winston. And I root for this redemption story. And see, he's a good quarterback for the city. I think that Winston and New Orleans get along well. I think there was a good feeling whenever he was brought back, and see what the Saints do. They never say die. They never say we're for this year going into a rebuild mode, even without Drew Brees. They're still going for it.
Yeah, the Saints had Bobby Hebert, so they're going to take Jameis Winston all day and twice on Sundays. Andy Dalton's behind him, and there's Ian Book who can't play. So, and no more Taysom Hill experiment at quarterback.
Right. He's a tight end now. Ian Book wasn't the guy that Sean Payton said, I see some of myself in him. See, so what was Sean Payton's career as NFL quarterback? I don't remember. So, I mean, maybe seeing yourself in a quarterback. I don't know. Andy Dalton, if Winston goes down again, gives them a high floor backup. So, again, this team intends to win. This team intends to make the playoffs. The team intends to electrify the city as they do when things are going well down here in New Orleans.
So, is Alvin Kamara going to get suspended or what? Like, there's a huge question mark around Kamara for what happened. You'll be surprised to know that it's all on video because it's Vegas. And, the NFL and video and whatever assaults or whatever he's accused of, it's not looking good for Kamara, but we're kind of waiting. again on another decision from the league. And fantasy GMs are getting impatient.
Yeah. Look, if you're just strictly looking at the suspension, because the NFL in the new CBA appears to want to wait until legal processes play out before levying a suspension, you might get a fully available Kamara. So I'm okay if he's in the third round. I get it. He was a first round running back. Now, I do believe you need to point out when you look at Kamara that when Mark Ingram joined the team last year, they went back to more of the old Mark Ingram Kamara backfield split. Kamara's weekly ceiling was not nearly as high with Ingram on the roster. Now, you might say Ingram's dust, and it doesn't matter, and Kamara's going to take this backfield over again, and Ingram's going to miss time. It could work out that way. And I suppose there's just a really simple fantasy take here where Kamara was a first-round pick last year, and the only thing that's really changed this year is Ingram. I mean, Teron Armstead's gone. But otherwise, his environment is similar, if not better, with the wide receivers and the passing game being more of a threat. And you might get 17 games of Winston. Remember, the second half of the year, when Kamara was in that Kamara-Ingram backfield, the offense was not very good from a passing standpoint because Winston had already gone down. So I'm not going to talk you out of taking Kamara. But the Saints have been preparing as if he's going to get suspended. I won't be surprised if we hear about a free agent running back, a veteran, Latavius Murray type that I know has been mentioned for the Steelers. He has some history with the Saints too. I'm just saying, like, somebody they feel like we're not just relying on Ingram and that's the thing. You can take Ingram in the last few rounds of your draft. He might be a starting running back for the first few weeks. I don't know what that's going to be worth. Again, this offense should be better. But then when you look past that, I suppose what the Saints do or don't do will tell us what they think about Kamara, which should give us some guidance. And I do think we'll see Kamara's ADP rebound. But when there's a video, remember Ray Rice, when there's a video, things can change very quickly. So this remains an unpredictable situation.
Maybe the Saints will pick up Melvin Gordon when he's cut.
Ooh, huh? Woo.
More on that a little bit later. It's for a different show, Bloom. It is a Broncos show, always. Well, we already complained about the Steelers quarterbacks. Yeah, that was in the first 5 seconds of the Falcons show. Always. So yeah, there you go. Let's talk about the backups because besides Ingram, going beyond Mark Ingram, there's some talent here. I like Tony Jones. I like Dwayne Washington. I really like Abram Smith. Hell, Bloom, I've always appreciated. How often have we talked about it's August? Well, it's almost August. It's time for us to talk about Devine Ozigbo and then never mention him again. But dude, all of these backs have something positive to say about him. I think Smith is the one that emerges.
Yeah.
But Jones is a hard charger. I've seen most of these guys on the All-Star road trip somewhere, Senior Bowl Shrine game. And I like them all, man.
Yeah. The Saints know how to pick undrafted running backs. Okay. Jones, we did get to see some last year. It's probably not anything there. You do have Dwayne Washington. Special teams might make him one of the players that makes the team, but not necessarily someone we care about for fantasy. Devine Ozigbo is a good all-around running back. And I was surprised that he hadn't caught on anywhere. I know that we liked him when James Robinson turned that story into his story whenever Ozigbo was with Jacksonville. So Ozigbo might be the favorite to be the number 3. But then there's Abram Smith. And you got to love these kinds of stories, Cecil, right? I mean, he was a linebacker, and he's a natural at running back. Even Matt Waldman says, I don't say too many guys are naturals when it comes to doing zone blocking, running, and things like that. He's a natural. And I think that Abram Smith is one of those guys that once training camp gets going, you might be hearing items like, hey, the Saints are just fine. They didn't sign a veteran running back, not because they don't think Kamara is going to get suspended. They don't know, but they really like Abram Smith. So Abram Smith is absolutely high on our preseason watch list, high on your preseason DFS as somebody who can prove out. And if he doesn't make the roster for the Saints, I think other teams could be hovering around him. There's a lot of interesting undrafted free agent running backs this year. Abram Smith might be the first one, the one I'm going to pay the most attention to, at least when training camp opens.
And Abram Smith is a former linebacker, kind of like Javonte Williams, a former linebacker himself. It is a Broncos show. It is a Saints wide receiver. What the what? Yeah. Sorry, Joe. It is okay, Michael Thomas. What are you going to get? Chris Olave. He's CD Lamb, everybody. He's CD Lamb. And then Jarvis Landry. Okay, PPR king. Winston security blanket. So all interesting topics. Thomas could be kind of depressing. Olave is like super exciting. Landry's kind of boring, but if I'm scoring points in my flex, bore the hell out of me. Just go keep getting me that PPR love, Jarvis.
Yeah, Michael Thomas. Let's start with him, because anytime a player was the number one fantasy wide receiver the last time we saw him healthy, you can get him in the 7th round. But this is kind of like when Julio Jones was available around there last year. There's enough signs that Michael Thomas isn't going to be the same. He went with rest with the ankle, then had surgery. And here's what's frustrating: he had that surgery August, September, and he's still not practicing. I feel like Michael Thomas is much more likely to be a zonk than a guy who can make your draft. Although, again, even with Taysom Hill, when he wasn't fully healthy, he was putting up 9 for 100. So you're on your own. I'm not going to be taking Michael Thomas. I'm not going to say it's the wrong move to take him, but signs point to that. And then if we start to think, okay, and all these pieces are interrelated, because if you think that Michael Thomas is not going to be a big factor in this offense, then is it Chris Olave? And like you said, he's super polished, ready. The Saints gave up a boatload to go get him. And again, if this offense has more volume for Jameis Winston, then Olave could be that guy. I would say at ADP, so if we're talking about at ADP, Olave is the one I want out of the rookie 5.
Yes.
I would rather have Olave at ADP than Burks at ADP, or London at ADP, or Garrett Wilson at ADP. And Jameson Williams, it's going to take too much patience. Maybe by the end of the year, he has an impact. And then you have Landry, who's back down here from Lutcher, right upriver a little bit from New Orleans. It's great. A reunion, right? Tyrann Mathieu is back. He lived right down the street here, went to school right down the street at St. Aug. St. Aug had someone drafted in the baseball draft in the 4th round yesterday. Love it. Purple Knights. New Orleans has that siren song. It brings you back. And when Mark Ingram came back just to the team, that was a great thing. But when these players come back, New Orleans has an incredible football scene. New Orleans or Miami, which Southeast Louisiana or South Florida. I'm not sure where the true heart of football is, but I think it's one of those two places. And Mardi Gras parades, what happens when there's not a parade going on? The kids are throwing footballs out in the streets. It's a football town. And it's happy to have Jarvis Landry back. I think he's going to get good football out of him. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a leading receiver for this team. I think it's kind of a either or. Either you take that chance on Thomas to regain his old form, or you take that chance on Landry. It's fun to have him back. And again, it's fun. See, we can talk about Marquez Callaway, who still has some upside. We can talk about Tre'Quan Smith, who's still a solid contributor in the NFL. We can talk about Deontay Hardy, who's a legitimate deep threat in the NFL, but isn't it great that they're supporting cast receivers and not the starters?
Yeah, and I know how Atlanta and New Orleans have that rivalry. Some say hatred bloom. Atlanta will rue the day they didn't get Chris Olave.
Yeah.
I just listen. Drake London's nice, and he could be Mike Evans, right? That's awesome in its own right. But today's game, and the way that receiver position's played, like Olave's ready now. So, that's going to be pretty exciting to see. Let's talk about the rest of the New Orleans receivers, including, I suppose I should tell this to myself. And it's because one of the coaches that I talked to is so high on Tre'Quan Smith, but stop trying to make Tre'Quan Smith a thing, Cecil. Tre'Quan. And the staff does love him. Again, spoiler alert, Lassie Bark. I talked to plenty of coaches around New Orleans and, in that building. And listen, they love the guy. He just doesn't do it when you're on the field. So anybody else here standing out? Deontay Hardy, anybody you like here? Marquez Callaway?
Well, they're all good receivers, and they're all really good contributors. They're all really good guys to have out in 3 or 4 wide sets and playing their role. And Callaway still has some upsides, untapped potential. And I think it's the Saints, it's undrafted free agents, preseason watch list. DeJuan Dixon. They have a draft pick from last year, QB Baker, who's super athletic, small school guy. Kevin White's still on a roster, Saints roster. So let's say his name too, because I didn't wonder if he hadn't had that stress fracture early on in his career, how things might have gone.
It's like Brashad Perriman, man. It's like they're just you get dealt a hand early sometimes, man. And it's like, just crush
game of inches, right?
That is for sure. Tight end position time, and Adam Troutman Colonel Troutman. Wasn't that Rambo, right, Bloom? So you should talk about Adam Troutman. You should talk about Adam Troutman in Sylvester Stallone voice. That would make me happy.
Yeah.
Taysom Hill there as well. Hey, there's Nick Vanette and Juwan Johnson. It's preseason watch list. I'll be watching the hell out of Juwan Johnson. And Troutman does have fantasy relevance, Bloom. So, because remember, and I've said this, I think every year we've talked about Jameis Winston. When he was at Florida State, he targeted the tight end more than any other quarterback. He loves his tight ends. That's Troutman.
Yeah. Anyway, Adam Troutman is Dayton. Athletic. Taysom Hill is anything. He's ready to fix the car. He can do anything. Juwan Johnson is big old wide receiver. Hey, oh, yeah, Nick Vanette do the blocking. Yeah. Love these tight ends.
My face already hurts, Bloom. So it just hurts more. It hurts. Anyway, thank you. Thank you for entertaining.
Always.
All right. That is the Audible. Oh, wait, we got one more team. And it's the best team in the division. Oh. Yeah. Oh boy. Here we go. Is Tom Brady gonna make another Super Bowl run? This time, sans Rob Gronkowski. They got plenty. We'll talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and their prospects for another Super Bowl next. I feel like there's a fear and loathing take here somewhere about Tom Brady. But yeah, Tom Brady's not aging. Whatever. He's back. Rinse, repeat. Fantasy GMs want him to do it again, Bloom. And he can. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, why would you think he won't, right? They lost Ali Marpet to early retirement. I love hearing about early retirement, Cease. Every time a player retires on his terms, an Angel gets their wings, right? And they got Shaq Mason for like nothing from the Patriots. They're going to be okay. Offensive line's going to be okay. Yes, they don't have Antonio Brown. Yes, they don't have Rob Gronkowski. So maybe for now, yeah. Antonio Brown's not coming back, but Gronk, we'll see. But I still think that this offense will be one of the top pass offenses. Tom Brady will more than justify his ADP. Depending on your scoring system, if you're in a scoring system with 5 or 6 point pass touchdowns or more points for 300-yard games or more points for long touchdowns, then Brady becomes much more interesting because he's going to throw the ball 650 plus times. And I think that he's rock solid. This offense is rock solid. And we just try to project without Brown, without Gronkowski, then if we think it's going to be a productive offense, look, even if the pie shrinks a little bit, if you take the Gronkowski slice and the Brown slice and you put them up for grabs, there's probably more opportunity for profit here than foolish picks with the Bucks.
It's preseason watch list, so I'm going to be watching to see the progress of Kyle Trask. He's the 3, Blaine Gabbert's the 2, but I want to see what Trask looks like, Bloom.
Yeah, well, when Tom Brady says he's not playing 5 more years, we'll see. It's kind of a year-to-year thing with Brady, but they need to know if Trask would be ready to start next year, or at least early signs. So I think preseason is going to be important for that. And you're right, Cecil. I guess I just want to say, because probably the biggest Twitter firestorm I ever set off was when I said that if I was picking a quarterback to start a franchise, I wouldn't pick Tom Brady. I guess I'm more of a tools guy. I think I might have even said he's not in the top 5. Obviously, that was before the Bucks chapter. Okay, I'll eat my crow here. But it is pretty incredible, Cease, because we're not just saying that nobody has done what Tom Brady is doing at his age at quarterback in the NFL. Nobody's even done it, played not even close to relevant at the NFL, at least in the modern NFL. So it is black magic, Cease. I don't know. I guess we got to get some of that TB12 stuff because we're getting old.
Well, I mentioned fear and loathing. So what was that? Adrenochrome, right? So whatever it is, Tom Brady, it's working. I will only say this, Bloom, because we won't be able to say it very much longer. There is a Texas versus the Nation player still on the roster.
Oh, yes.
It's usually Latavius Murray. Like,
Right.
thank God for Latavius Murray, but it's Ryan Griffin, the
yeah.
quarterback. Yeah, who we saw at the last with Dane Brugler.
Yeah.
A young Dane Brugler. And Dane's, in my opinion, one of the best, if not the best draft analyst, period. And so a young Dane Brugler and you and me were sitting in a condemned stadium.
$60 million. High school football stadium that cost $60 million and was condemned.
Down in Dallas, Texas, for the final Texas versus the Nation game where Ryan Griffin was. Bloom, I take the time to say that because we're not going to be talking about any players from Texas versus the Nation pretty soon.
The castle's made of sand, right? Or don't go chasing waterfalls. I don't know. It's nice to reminisce. And again, it's just kind of crazy to me that Tom Brady is like our age, Cease. And maybe this is the secret take here is this is going to be when it all falls apart for Brady. I don't know. But I do know that Leonard Fournette, maybe, man, when you come down to New Orleans, it can steer you. There's a good Ethiopian restaurant that has some really good vegetarian food. There's some places maybe that Leonard shouldn't be stopping when he comes back home.
Okay. Dave Gladstone in the chat brings up Jimmy G. We got to talk about it. But, dude, I got to tell everyone, wait for the NFC West episode. Wait for the 49ers take. Again, Lassie Bark. Jimmy G might be starting for somebody.
Sure.
But it's not Tampa.
Right. How quickly did everybody scramble to say, no, Jimmy G, no? I mean, maybe that's something that's make us suspicious, to be honest. But, yeah, Jimmy G can still play.
They're not really shopping him. I'll say as much as I can, Bloom, and I'll try to figure out the way I can say stuff for the 49ers episode. They're not really shopping him. Okay? So for everyone like, he's going to go here, he's going to go here, he's going to go here. Their asking price is so high that if you pay it, they'll trade him. But they don't maybe really want to trade him. More on that later. I hate to do that to everybody, but that's what I have to do for now because we have to talk about Tampa Bay's backfield, including a 260-pound Leonard Fournette pushed by Rachaad White. Now, Matt Waldman is not necessarily a fan of Rachaad White. White is a fan of himself, Bloom. White's just putting it out there like, I want to be the starter. I want to be the lead back. Now, in space, White is very dangerous. What, Tevin Coleman, Bloom? Do you see Tevin Coleman when you watch a young Tevin Coleman?
Straight line speed there.
Yeah,
He's more rugged than Coleman, though. He can break a tackle.
Yeah, exactly. But with Rachaad White, interesting prospect. Give him a lane and let him go. I like to see more inside-out guys that are capable of taking it inside and then bouncing it outside. White likes to go to the corner store too much. But we'll see. I mean, the dude is incredibly motivated, and Leonard Fournette is 260 pounds.
Yeah. And look, Fournette's going to drop the weight. I mean, Cease, do you think this is the first offseason that Leonard Fournette was up to 260 pounds?
No.
It's okay. He's going to drop the weight, but it's more of a reminder, I think, that he's going to miss time. Leonard Fournette, the lead back. Leonard Fournette, even when he was sharing with Ronald Jones, was missing time. So we want to know what's going on behind him. And look, Fournette, maybe the 260-pound item does make you back off him, say, as a first-round pick. Maybe it makes you think a little longer if you're weighing him against Aaron Jones or weighing him against Saquon Barkley in the second round, if he's falling to the second rounds. I get it, but we all saw what he could do in this offense. And let's face it, if there is a problem of viable pass catchers for Tom Brady, then Leonard Fournette can easily catch 8, 9, 10 catches in a game. No problem. And, just remember this, and we'll revisit this when we get to the wide receivers. Tom Brady doesn't care about conventional wisdom, right? Tom Brady he'll throw to a guy 17 times a game. Can you tell where I'm going to go with this? He's going to just do what works, and he's going to do it a lot. And Leonard Fournette showed, again, last year, he's a really solid receiver out of the backfield. He can finish those drives with touchdowns. But Rachaad White, the thing you notice, the Pewter Report, they were glowing about Rachaad White. They're like, you can see, now granted, it's OTA's minicamp, but you can see what this guy brings to the table, which I think is more about Keyshawn Vaughn.
Yes, right.
And Keyshawn Vaughn, probably just a truly adept back. Giovanni Bernard, a depth back. I don't think they're going to release him. If you want to go to the Super Bowl and you have a guy who is good on passing downs out of the backfield, you need to keep that guy around. Okay. But Rachaad White, his ADP should be going up. And see, when we eventually do the players that can make your fantasy, Rachaad White, he could make your draft this year.
Yeah, and big plays could abound out of that backfield because you're so worried about those wide receivers. You mentioned Vaughn, just a guy. We'll see there. Gio's still kicking around, right?
Right.
Check on that. Yeah. Gio's there. Kenyon Barner still in the league. Okay, good. But this story really is about White, and here's when his ADP jumps. Preseason, he'll make a big play, and everyone, it'll be viral. That'll be the viral play.
Yeah, and I think, for instance, would you rather have Alexander Madison or Rashad White?
Rashad White.
Think of him in that area of your draft, 10th, 12th round. He may end up getting higher than that if Leonard Fournette gets dinged up in training camp.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, here's the wide receivers, and here's more Mike Evans talk, rinse, repeat, whatever. The talk around Chris Godwin is that he will be ready week 1. But Bloom, is there a little bit more for Russell Gage early while Godwin is kind of eased back into the mix?
Yeah, we'll get to Mike Evans. Let's go ahead and take this. I think that the Bucs are going to be smart enough to err on the side of caution here. Again, it's Super Bowl or bust. Come on,
they've got the time and they have the receivers.
Right.
I think it was Diego in the chat was like, "Hey, are they going to add Julio Jones or Will Fuller?" I'm like, dude, there's good receivers that are going to get cut.
Yeah, they've got quite a battle for the number 4 receiver, and could be the number 3 to open the season. So Chris Godwin is a similar proposition to DeAndre Hopkins in the sense that because Hopkins is going to be suspended 6 games. At what point in the season are we going to see old Chris Godwin? It might not be at any point in the season. Let's be fair. But if it is during the season, probably around the same time, right? So Godwin, Hopkins, these are both guys that are, if healthy, are worth a 2nd or a 3rd round pick, but they have obstacles to that. And then questions with Hopkins, is he starting to decline? I didn't see any of that, but he's getting to that age. With Godwin, is he going to be the same the first year back from an ACL? We'll see. We'll be paying attention, but we have to pay more attention to Russell Gage. And I think it's rational. I don't think it's crazy, Cease, to take Gage over Godwin. Or if Godwin's on the board in the 6th or 7th round and you're thinking, I really want to take Godwin, just wait another round or 2 and take Gage. Because Brady recruited Gage. Brady went after Gage. And what a success story, by the way, for the Falcons. Because when Gage was drafted out of LSU, they didn't know if he was going to be a wide receiver, cornerback. Just there's an athlete here. Let's figure out what we can do with him. And Gage,
how many times have we seen that with LSU players that didn't work out?
Right. And it more than worked out. They got a comp pick for the troubles, or at least in the formula. I don't know if it actually worked out that way with their signings. But Gage is the guy. Cease, that's probably going to come out of the gate with 7 for 80 as a pretty regular line for him, and with spike weeks maybe of 11 for 120, because he's going to be, as Godwin's getting eased back in, he's going to be that number 2 receiver. He's going to be the possession receiver. He's going to have Tom's eye. But Cease, if that's what Gage is going to do, what's Evans going to do while Godwin's getting right?
Yeah, anything he wants, basically. Like the Evans take is simple. It's Mike Evans drafted.
Right.
Next
2nd round pick. I mean, and I get it. Look, 2nd round's tough this year. The good thing about the 2nd round this year is there's a lot of players that feel like they're worth a 2nd round pick, right? Aaron Jones, CD Lamb, right? Saquon Barkley, if you dig on Barkley as a bounce back story, you dig on I made up a name for that regime, Cease. You can take the Shable regime in the Giants, right? You believe in the Shable regime. But Mike Evans is continuing to be the guy that I'm zeroing in on as my 2nd round pick. Because again, Tom Brady don't care. No one can have 150. Yeah, if it's Tom Brady, someone can have 150 catches in a year. Okay. If Mike Evans was winning, then Tom Brady is going to target Mike Evans. And Mike Evans is going to keep winning. So this should be a career year for Evans, who at this point, I don't want to get premature. At this point, Mike Evans is putting together a Hall of Fame career.
Oh, he's first ballot Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
He's first ballot Hall of Fame.
And we may see his peak year statistically this year. Buy the ticket, take the ride.
Would he be remembered as a greater player than Randy Moss? My answer is yes.
Yeah.
Already. And Randy Moss was brilliant. But Mike Evans he never stops. The interesting wide receivers, Bloom. It is preseason watch list, and I'm glad we can unpack this type of stuff because I'm running down the newswire at footballguys.com. And hey, there's a couple of ways you can support the show. You can subscribe to footballguys.com. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our subscription price for footballguys.com is an annual price. It's a good price. We appreciate you guys. That's how we do what we're able to do. So thank you for supporting footballguys.com, especially in these times where everything's tight. But we also going over the newswire because we have our free daily newsletter, takes written every day by me, Sigmund Bloom, Joe Bryant. Check it out. It's free. All the news right to your inbox. If you've been subscribing to the newsletter, you've already read these. But I just want to recap for everyone. This has come out in the last week. Tyler Johnson might be on the roster bubble. Scotty Miller is on the roster bubble. There's a couple of reasons why, and they're both undrafted. Jareth Stearns from Western Kentucky and Devin Tompkins from Utah State. These kids can play.
Yeah.
These kids can play. So if you are, looking at this roster and like deep dynasty, whatever, you want both of these players because Tyler Johnson's a good receiver. Scotty Miller's got a role, right? Like every team would want a Scotty Miller type of guy. Those guys might not make it because Jareth Stearns is that good and Devin Tompkins could be a sleeping giant on the Buccaneers roster. So hell yeah, preseason watch list. I'm going to be watching these young undrafted receivers. And there's my man, Brashad Perriman.
Yeah.
I called him my man and then I mispronounced his name. He's totally my man, that Brashad Perriman. But yeah, they've got a talented group that just got more cramped because of those UDFAs, man.
Yeah, it's a free-for-all. And I think we've seen what Tyler Johnson can do. We've seen what Scotty Miller can do. We've seen what Brashad Perriman can do. Cyril Grayson is an interesting guy, another LSU guy, track star, who's made it at least to have an NFL career. But the names you want to focus on, you mentioned Stearns, you mentioned Tompkins. And Tompkins, I love. I made this speech on a show yesterday, Cecil. I love that the NFL is allowing for these. What was Tompkins listed at? 5'8", 155? I love that the NFL has a room for 5'8", 150 guys, 155 with the ball in their hands. There's room for them. The field is more spread out. Again, it's that guy that forces the defense to honor the jet sweep. Tompkins can be that guy. He can have a role in this offense right away. The other name I got to toss out there is Jalen Darden. Now, Darden didn't have a great rookie year, but he didn't get cut.
Still got talent. And they're so packed. I forgot to bring up Jalen Darden, dude.
Right. And that's the guy that we haven't seen just show that he's a quality contributor. There could be something more there. They loved him. Okay. Shades of John Brown, right? A small school receiver who it might translate the quickness, the speed, the suddenness as a receiver. I think there's been some buzz of him starting to turn it around in year two, a la Terrace Marshall. So let's watch this. There's absolutely a lot to unpack here, Cease, because again, if Godwin's not ready to start the season, if there is an injury to Russell Gage, if there is an injury to Mike Evans, one of these rookies could be instantly fantasy relevant. In Jordan's case, a second-year player. But if they can play, they're going to make the team. And if they can make the team and get on the field with Tom Brady, they're going to produce.
Well, the Buccaneers official website is saying that Cade Otton could be the top tight end option. Okay. Cameron Brate's still there. Brate can play. Brate's good. And I do think, what is it? Thanksgiving, right?
Right.
Thanksgiving, you're eating some turducken. Tommy Brady's like, damn it, we're just a little off. He calls up his guy, Rob. Yo, Rob, what's good, man? I need you. And Rob Gronkowski will answer that call. So, like, it's now Cade Otton or Cameron Brate. We can talk about that, Bloom.
Right.
I still think Gronk will play if Brady calls him.
Yeah. When Drew Rosenhaus comes out and tells us, it's just my opinion, but if Tom calls and it's late in the season or the playoffs, maybe Rob would pick up the phone. Cade Otton could get the most snaps. Maybe he is a better blocker than Cameron Brate at this point. Cameron Brate is a guy, though, that could be a big touchdown hog. Look, I won't be surprised if through the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, Brate is a top 10, top 12 fantasy tight end just on touchdowns. Now, granted, that's going to give you like the 2 for 15 or 3 for 22 and a touchdown, kind of maybe 4 for 30 and 2 touchdowns. So let's not forget about Brate. I wouldn't necessarily draft him, but I won't be surprised if he comes out of the gate hot. Another name I'm going to throw out there, Cease, that they kicked the tires on, or at least there was some buzz of some interest, was Kyle Rudolph. And maybe Kyle Rudolph, and Rudolph could also end up back with the Vikings. Maybe Rudolph is one of those players that if they don't sign Rudolph, then that gives us maybe more of a hint that they think Gronkowski could return at some point this season. If they do sign Rudolph, maybe Gronk means it this time.
Did they actually? The Broncos, to my knowledge, are the only team that brought him in.
Right.
So
I don't think that
just
they brought
buzz
him
about
in.
him, or I think I read that, right? Him or the
Yeah.
Vikings bringing him back. And
Right.
Rudolph might be one of those guys now that's like after week 1, the NFL really doesn't care about its players.
Right.
So it's like, oh,
They don't wanna
after week
guarantee money.
1,
Yeah.
there's no guaranteed salary for a vested veteran. So that might be that.
Yeah. Jeremy Fowler said the Bucs are involved, whatever that means.
I like Jeremy. Jeremy's a good reporter.
Yeah.
So, consider the source. When you said Pewter Report earlier about Rachaad White, I was like, yes, because
Yes.
Pewter Report, there's team affiliated websites, and Pewter Report weren't they the first?
They were one of the first. Well, that's the thing. They were the model.
Yes.
SB Nation and all this other stuff.
Yes.
Before any of that was the Pewter Report.
And now, like, there's I always make fun of it. There's people that cover the Broncos that aren't even here, and their bosses don't know that, and they'll like get in trouble if they knew that. I'm like, how are you here when no one in the building's ever given you even a temporary credential? Like, how do you cover the team? But when you say Pewter Report, that is the upper echelon. That is the top of the top. So there's some good resources out there. You say Jeremy Fowler, Mike Reese, right? We always talk about. It's good to highlight that. We don't always get that, especially today. But when you do, that's when you got to listen to what a Pewter Report is reporting. He is Sigmund Bloom, and that is a wrap for the NFC South. AFC South coming up sometime. Sigmund Bloom, you follow him on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. The show is at the Audible. And I am at Cecil Lammey saying, thanks everyone for watching. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned. And as always, I command that you stay frosty.